Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Macro Tech Podcast, where we take a closer look at individual features of phones or just a specific device from the past and tell you all about it and give my perspective. I'm your host, Isaac. Today, I'm going to be talking about the Pixel 4 XL, the 5-year-old Pixel flagship that I still use as my primary phone in 2024. Start with the bad stuff or the controversies at launch. At launch, they had a telephoto lens instead of a wide angle, and that was a big point of controversy. Remember when we had to pick one? Kind of crazy. They said on stage during the keynote that, in somewhat similar to these words, wide angle might be more fun, but the telephoto is more useful. And I honestly agree with them. I do agree with them. But I wish the telephoto lens had a higher zoom, higher magnification. It would make it a lot more useful. But overall, in general, I think telephoto lenses are more useful than wide angles for a lot of people. For example, you're at a park, you see a cool animal of some sort way off in the distance. Wide angle isn't going to help you there. And a lot of the phones from this time specifically had poor zoom and just not very great long distance photos. So this was better than not having it 100%. If it was a 5 times lens, it would have been way ahead of its time. I think it would have made it very useful. But as it is, it's still useful. It's still somewhat useful, and it's still more useful than a wide angle lens of similar quality, in my opinion. It is a very gimmicky phone in some ways, but in the best way possible. I really want to dive into the motion sense. It's such a fun feature that nobody really seems to talk about or bring up anymore. It's very useful for me, not even just gimmicky. In the car, when I have it on my phone stand, it's a lifesaver when I'm driving. I don't want to have to even talk to my phone. It's mindless to just swipe your hand past the screen, change songs, pause the music, anything like that, without even looking at it. And it works flawlessly for me. So yeah, motion sense is something I wish they'd bring back. Bring the bezel back. I don't like the punch hole cameras. Bring the bezel back, add that motion sense back in. Give up on the all-screen thing. Honestly, it's just me. There are dozens of us that would prefer it this way. But, I would prefer it that way. In the Pixel 9 series, of course, they have the better Gemini, voice recognition, all of that. And I think Google Assistant is a worthy replacement for the motion sense in a way, since it's so good now. But motion sense still has its advantages over the voice assistant in a lot of ways. And why not have both, you know? I can see a lot of people would prefer to have the bigger screen, more screen real estate, but I'd much rather have the bezel. Another thing I want to talk about is the aspect ratio of the display. Nobody talked about this either. It's not a 19:9 aspect ratio, which was typical of the time. It's a 20:9 aspect ratio. This is unique, and it makes the phone slightly less wide for the screen size it has. It's really great because it makes it easier to hold. It doesn't really compromise on screen real estate in landscape mode very much, I don't think. It has a lot of good advantages over a 19:9 display, like the thinner profile, or less wide, a lot easier to hold on to. It's closer to, if you ever watch 21:9 content, it will look better than it would on a 19:9 display, less letterboxing, less cutoff when you zoom to fill. And I don't see much of a disadvantage when watching 16:9 content or any of the other content that you'd watch on a phone, really. It's pretty perfect for me. It does cut off a little more on the left and right when you zoom to fill, but not enough for me to say that I would wish I had the 19:9 back. I think it's a very perfect middle ground between the 20:9 aspect ratio on the Sony phones, for example, and the aspect ratio on an iPhone or in a Galaxy. I think I prefer this phone over the newer flagships just because of how fun it was, how gimmicky in the best way possible it was. The motion sense added so much fun to this phone. It has a lot of cool software features. The squeeze for Google Assistant is super useful. It does have Gemini now. I don't know if anybody knows that. It's on Android 13 with Gemini. Works pretty good. I'm loving that. The Pixel Recorder app is amazing. I did use that to record this episode before I switched softwares just because I was somewhere else and I wanted to try it, and it worked perfectly. I just didn't have the right microphone, so it was quiet. But that was great. Pixel Recorder app. The whole keynote was recorded on the Pixel Recorder app, which I found to be a very cool thing. I also would say the battery life is a lot better than people make it out to be. I think battery life is a touchy subject in phones just because people don't realize you can plug it in during the day. If you're sitting at a desk all day like a lot of these people are, plug it in while you're sitting there, plug it in the car, and you will never run out of battery. I think there's a very small audience of people in my mind that needs the phone to have 2 days worth of screen on time without charging it. I think it's not that big of a deal to plug it in the car at home when you're sitting down. That's just me, but that is how I use my phone, and it works perfectly for that. As far as the processor, this is where it starts to show its age a little bit. Multitasking can be a little difficult with only 6 gigs of RAM in the power-hungry or RAM-hungry software. It might not be as RAM-hungry as other Android skins, but it does use up a lot of RAM. You can have 4 apps open at once, and they'll all refresh when you switch between them. And that is the biggest issue with this phone for me, the RAM management. If it had, if it had 12 gigs of RAM like the Pixel 9, and literally everything else it already has, I'd be more than happy to use this phone for a long, long time, past how long I'm already going to use it. Keep in mind that it's been 5 years since this phone came out, and I'm using it now. I have owned an Xperia 1 Mark II, a Pixel 6 Pro, believe it or not, and I sold the Pixel 6 Pro and bought a Pixel 4 XL. I had owned a Pixel 4 XL before the 6 Pro a while back, and I loved it. But I thought the Pixel 6 would be better. I don't like it better. I like the 4 better. I paid $150 for this thing. Pretty much perfect condition on a website called Back Market. It's a good refurbished website. And I have no regrets. I think the only downside for me is that no more software support. I was considering flashing Graphene OS or Lineage OS or something like that, rooting it, but we'll see. Don't want to have to deal with no face unlock for banking apps or no banking app support stuff. Compared to other phones I've had, it's just very unique and satisfying to use for me. I'm always looking forward to picking it up, and it's never a hassle. It's never something I'm like, oh, I have to use this phone again. And it's not drawing in my attention and making me distracted like a lot of phones would, like a Galaxy. I had a Note 9 at one point. That was terrible for my ADHD. I could never focus on anything because all the colors and all the flashy features. The Pixel 4 XL has all kinds of cool features, and you want to use it in a practical way. It supports a practical use case, and it supports you to be on task. And I really like that. For example, the motion sense, when you use that, you're not getting distracted or sidetracked. It's a clear way to make everything you're doing simpler and smoother and easier. So I guess that's pretty much all I have for today. This is completely unscripted. I just clicked the button, started talking. So let me know what you guys think, and maybe I'll see you again some other time.